should have recognized the danger the first time I saw her eyes too still, too calculating, like someone who was already imagining the worst thing she could do to me. But back then, I was naive enough to believe people didn't destroy others. Without a reason, I was wrong. So painfully, catastrophically wrong. My name is Elena Ward, and 5 years ago, I thought I had walked into the start of my perfect life. It began with a blind date in Portland, Oregon, arranged by a colleague who insisted I needed to loosen up and meet a man who wasn't emotionally constipated. The stories I'd heard about blind dates were enough to make my skin crawl. Catfish encounters. Creepy, oversharing men who talked only about crypto, but something in me wanted to try. Maybe luck, or fate, or some cosmic joke. But the moment I saw Mason Hawley, I forgot every horror story I'd ever heard. He looked at me as if he already knew me, as if something in the air had shifted. He was warm, charming, and maddeningly attentive, not in a performative way, but in a way that made me feel seen. He noticed when my voice lifted while I teased him, how my fingers curled when I laughed, even how I inhaled slightly before trying to flirt. No one had ever studied me like that. During the date, between cocktails and stolen glances, Mason joked lightly, "My family's a little crazy, just so you know." And I stupidly laughed it off. Everyone's family is a little crazy, right? 2 years later, standing at the aisle of a church in Salem, dressed in white and shaking with the kind of joy that makes your bones hum, I realized that joke was the first warning I missed. Our wedding day should have been the clean beginning of a beautiful life. Mason's hands trembling in mine, my heartbeat thundering inside my chest, the scent of lilies and old wooden pews filling the air. But instead, it became the stage for the first crack in everything. I met Rowan, Mason's brother's girlfriend. That day, though, calling her simply Rowan feels too gentle for the kind of presence she carried. She was sharp edges wrapped in silk, the kind of person whose smile always held an aftertaste of something sour. I had never met her before. And yet, somehow, the moment she looked at me, it felt like she already hated me. I approached her after the ceremony, glowing from adrenaline and champagne. She wore a dress that brushed dangerously close to white, not quite bridal, but close enough for the intention to feel pointed. And I wasn't confrontational, and I didn't want to ruin my own wedding day by being petty. I glided toward her, laughing, floating, drunk on happiness. "Hi, I'm Alina," I said warmly, leaning in for a hug. She pushed me hard enough to make me stumble. Her face twisted with contempt. "You're embarrassing yourself. Being the center of attention doesn't suit you." I blinked, stunned, but I refused to let her win, so I smiled through it and returned to the dance floor, letting the music swallow the discomfort. "Maybe that's why she escalated. You're lucky Mason has such low standards," she spat when she approached me again, her words slurring just enough to make me wonder if she was drunk. "Because if he were more like his brother, he would have slapped you for thinking you had a chance. With him, who brags about dating a man who hits women?" I turned away, refusing to give her my joy. But that must have enraged her deeper than anything I could have said, because minutes later she came back with a glass of red wine and threw it at my dress. The cold liquid drenched me from chest to thigh, blooming like a spreading wound across the fabric, just as gasps rose from the guests. She hissed, "I hope you never have kids. Ever." The words were so random, so vicious, they hit me harder than the wine. I stood frozen for a second, anger prickling under my skin, humiliation choking my throat, but crying would ruin the night. Drawing attention to myself would make it worse, so I slipped outside, called my best friend, and had her bring a spare white dress. I changed in the bathroom, fixed my shaky smile, and danced my way back into the reception. I told no one, not even Mason, a mistake I will regret for the rest of my life. Because 3 months later, after our honeymoon, after we whispered late-night dreams about the children we wanted, the family we'd build, the nursery we'd paint, I got pregnant, and then I lost the baby. I remember the moment clearly. Rowan had brushed past me on the staircase at Mason's brother's house. She accidentally tripped me with her heel, sending me forward into the railing. I fell belly first. The doctor later told me it was a miscarriage. Aunt believed Rowan when she said it was an accident. I was grieving, raw, desperate to believe the world wasn't cruel on purpose. But Rowan, she kept smiling. She kept making strange comments about loss and letting go, posting quotes about things that weren't meant to stay, and she kept pushing me to drink at gatherings, even though I was still emotionally wrecked. Looking back, I see every sign I ignored, but at the time, grief blinds you, hope blinds you. Months later, when the doctor told us it would be unlikely for me to ever conceive again, Mason fell apart in my arms. It was the first time I had ever seen him cry, shaking with a sorrow he didn't know how to hold. We never told anyone, but somehow, Rowan looked victorious whenever she saw me. She smiled. More, but then, a miracle. I got pregnant again. I still remember Mason's reaction, collapsing to his knees, pressing his face against my stomach like he was afraid it would disappear if he blinked. He kissed my belly again and again, whispering, "My girl, my little girl," long before we even knew the gender. For 12 weeks we told no one, hiding joy like a secret flame we were terrified to expose to the wind. Only my best friend Sarah knew. She helped Mason and me build the nursery, a soft yellow room with tiny details we chose together, laughing like children ourselves. When we finally reached the safe milestone, we planned a dinner at our home in Beaverton, inviting both families for a casual get. We thought it would be magical, a memory we'd always cherish. But Rowan was coming, and I didn't yet understand that some people are drawn to joy only to snuff it out that night. While the house buzzed with warmth and conversation, Rowan and Mason's brother Caleb were all over each other, clinging, kissing, giggling in ways that made everyone uncomfortable. Their behavior crackled in the air like static, impossible to ignore. But I focused on the happiness swelling inside me, on Mason's hand squeezing mine, on the ultrasound photos waiting in my pocket when Mason and I stood to make our announcement. The room quieted as parents leaned closer. My mother covered her mouth as if she already knew. I pulled out the sonogram pictures. We're expecting silence. Then an explosion of joy cheers, hugs, tears. Everyone rushed toward us. Everyone. Except Rowan. She sat frozen, her stare venomous. Lips pressed so tight the color drained from them. I felt her hatred like a physical presence in the room. Later, in the nursery, she criticized everything the room we chose. The colors, the clothes, the details. Mason and I spent hours perfecting. Every word was barbed, intentional, cruel. And when my mother and mother-in-law arrived, catching her mid-critique, she tried to twist her words, acting like she was just giving advice. But her mask cracked. Everyone saw it. Caleb dragged her home early, humiliated, apologizing profusely, and still, I tried to understand her. Still, I made excuses for her. I didn't know God. I didn't know that this was just the beginning. Because the day my daughter was born, Rowan saw her, and something dark ignited behind her. Eyes, something possessive, something unhinged, something that would lead her months later to take my newborn child into her arms and walk out of a wedding like she'd been waiting her entire life to steal what was mine. And none of us saw it coming. Not until it was almost too late. The months after our announcement dinner felt like living inside a fragile dream. One, I was terrified to breathe too hard near or afraid it might shatter. Mason and I existed in a bubble of quiet anticipation. Every morning, he kissed my belly before I even opened my eyes. Every night, he whispered stories to the tiny life growing inside me. For the first time since the miscarriage, I allowed myself to imagine a future again, but Rowan lingered at the edges of everything, like a shadow that refused to leave the corner of a lit room. I tried to forget the look she gave me during the announcement, that venomous, almost feral glare. At the time, I told myself it was jealousy, bitterness, rooted in the trauma Caleb had explained to us later. And I did sympathize with her, but sympathy only goes so far when someone actively hates your existence. I didn't expect her to do anything that was my second mistake. After the announcement disaster, Caleb reached out to apologize again, sounding exhausted, embarrassed, and desperate to keep the peace. He explained more about Rowan's past teen pregnancy, a marriage that crumbled under medical complications, years of failed attempts to conceive again. The grief, he said, changed her, hardened her, twisted her in ways she didn't know how to express. And for a moment I felt guilty for ever thinking poorly of her. But then, she saw my daughter. The day Lily was born was the closest I'd ever come to transcendence. I remember looking down at her tinny, warm, fragile, with the faintest fuzz of Hirond, feeling something inside me rearrange itself, a seismic shift, the kind that makes you understand instantly that nothing in your life will ever matter more than protecting this small, perfect life. Mason cried openly, his hands trembling as he held her. She's everything, he whispered, and she was, but not everyone saw her that way. Caleb called a few hours after we got home from the hospital, asking if he and Rowan could stop by. I hesitated, my instincts jabbed at me hard, warning me, but Mason, ever gracious, ever forgiving, reminded me that they were family, and I didn't want to look paranoid or cruel, so I said yes. Rowan arrived holding a gift bag, dressed in a floral blouse that didn't quite hide her exhaustion. Her hair was messy, her makeup smudged, as if she'd rushed out the door without looking in the mirror. But her eyes were sharp, dot-sharp, and fixed entirely on Lily. She walked straight to the bassinet without even saying hello. She leaned over, staring for a long, unsettling moment. She doesn't have much hair, she said finally, not looking away. Babies like that usually grow up with thin hair. It wasn't the word sit, was the tone. Cold, cutting, like she wanted to carve something into me with every syllable. Mason stiffened beside me. Caleb gently placed a hand on Rowan's shoulder and whispered something, but she shrugged him off. I tried to stay calm for Lily. She's beautiful, I said simply. Rowan didn't respond. She just kept staring, observing, studying my daughter, like she was an object instead of a newborn. Caleb noticed the tension and apologized quickly, ushering Rowan out before things escalated. But as they left, Rowan looked back just. A small glance over her shoulder. There was something unhinged in that. Look, that's something hungry. Dot had haunted me for days, months passed, and Rowan's attention to Lily only grew stranger. Whenever we ended up at the same family gatherings, she'd appear close by, watching Lily, hovering, making remarks about how babies bond with the wrong people sometimes, how mothers get replaced, how attachment can shift if someone else provides more stability. Her words clung to my skin like filth I couldn't scrub off. Mason and I talked about it late at night, whispering so Lily wouldn't hear, even though that made no sense. Whispering because speaking too loudly would make the danger feel real. We should keep our distance, Mason said one night, his jaw tight, his voice low. I nodded. She hates me. I don't know why, but she does. Mason kissed my forehead. She doesn't get to touch our life. But I think, deep down, he already feared she would try. Then came the engagement announcement. Caleb proposed to Rowan after only a year of dating. The family was stunned, some pleasantly, some decidedly not. My mother-in-law Judith did not hide her displeasure. She had tried to be civil for Caleb's sake, but Rowan made it almost impossible. Their arguments had become more frequent, often sparked by Rowan's unpredictable hostility. When Mason confronted Caleb about rushing into things, Caleb confessed something that made the room go still. Rowan was pregnant. For months pregnant, the word hit me like a slap. Not because I resented her having a child, but because I knew that Rowan wouldn't emotionally survive sharing the spotlight with someone else's baby. And Lily, with her sweet curls and bright eyes and gentle coos, was everything Rowan seemed to covet, but couldn't stand to see. Their wedding planning devolved into chaos quickly. Rowan had meltdowns over dress fittings, refused to compromise on anything, and pushed the wedding date back an entire year so she could bounce back from childbirth. Caleb complied with everything, fueled by love or guilt or desperation. I couldn't tell which. Their daughter, Ivy, was born a month before the wedding. Mason and I visited the hospital, offering congratulations despite our unease. Ivy was beautiful, dark-haired, rosy-cheeked, full of life. Rowan barely acknowledged us. She kept shifting Ivy away from Lily, as if proximity alone would contaminate her. My stomach tightened with dread. I didn't know why, but something in me screamed that Rowan would not let Lily exist peacefully. A week before the wedding, Rowan called me. Her name flashing on my phone felt like a warning. I answered slowly, my voice small. Alina, her tone was clipped, rehearsed. I need to know if you're bringing Lily to the wedding. I hesitated. Yes, we'll have her with us. We'll rotate watching her in the hotel room, so... No, Rowan snapped, cutting me off. I don't want her there. My breath caught. Why? She exhaled sharply, like I was slow. Because this is Ivy's day. Mine and Ivy's. I will not have your child stealing attention. My pulse thudded painfully. Rowan, no one is going to if you can't respect my boundaries, she said, her voice rising in pitch and hysteria. Then don't come at all. The silence afterward was thick, suffocating. I didn't even get the chance to respond before she hung up. The argument that followed between Rowan and Caleb and Mason and his mother, Rowan screaming in the background, was nuclear. Caleb eventually apologized to us on Rowan's behalf and insisted Lily was welcome, but I felt something shift. Rowan wasn't just jealous. She wasn't just unstable. She was unraveling, and unraveling people do dangerous, reckless things. The wedding day arrived on a deceptively beautiful afternoon in Vancouver, Washington. Sunlit gardens, airy decorations, guests in pastel colors. It should have been pleasant. It should have been normal, but from the moment we walked in, I felt tension humming under my skin. Rowan's eyes followed us, followed Lily, followed every touch, every coo, every smile other guests offered my daughter. People adored Lily. They always had. She had that kind of warmth that attracted affection, and every time someone commented on her, Rowan stiffened on at the ceremony. She stood at the altar cradling Ivy, glaring at the guests who dared look at my daughter. Her hostility pulsed around me like heat. After the vows, we transitioned to the reception hall where the music, food, and laughter began. Mason, Judith, and I took turns taking Lily to our hotel room upstairs for quiet time. It was a system we'd perfected, one of us always with her, always alert, always safe. But Rowan had been watching the rotations, counting them, waiting for the perfect gap. She found one, midway through the evening. Judith became tipsy and insisted on giving Mason and me a break. Despite my instincts screaming no, Mason assured me it would be fine for her to watch Lily for just an hour. We returned to the reception. 20 minutes later, Judith stumbled into the hall, pale, frantic, breathless. Alana, Mason, she's gone. Lily is gone. My heart stopped. What do you mean gone? I demanded, grabbing her shoulders. Judith's entire body shook. I had just stepped into the bathroom. Just for a minute, and when I came back, Rowan was there and then she wasn't. Tan Lily wasn't. The world tilted. Mason's voice rose, sharp and violent with panic. Mom, where is my daughter? Judith sobbed. She took Hi. Didn't think she said she wanted to help Hi. Didn't. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might collapse. We tore through the hotel searching for them. Hallways, service corridors, parking lots, bathrooms, gardens, every corner, every shadowed space. Nothing. No Lily. No Rowan. Hotel security joined. Staff spread out. Caleb panicked and ran through the ballroom screaming Rowan's name. Guests noticed. The music stopped. Someone called 911. I could barely breathe. My daughter, my baby, gone. After an hour of frantic searching that hollowed out my soul, a hotel employee finally sprinted toward us from the back exit. I found them. We ran behind the hotel, near the dumpsters and staff break area. Sat Rowan in a metal chair. Smoking. Calm, like she was waiting for, and Uber. Lily was in her arms. Crying, not hurt, but not home. I ripped my daughter from Rowan's grasp, trembling as I checked her from head to toe. Mason exploded. What the hell is wrong with you? Rowan shrugged, like she'd borrowed a sweater and forgotten to return it. I was helping, she said lazily. Your mom looked tired. Judith screamed. You kidnapped her. Rowan smirked, eyes meeting mine with chilling satisfaction. If you're that scared of losing your daughter, she said softly, maybe you shouldn't have brought her. And in that moment, I finally understood. She wanted me afraid. She wanted power. She wanted me to bend. She wanted Lily. The police arrived seconds later. Do you want to press charges? The officer asked me. Rowan expected me to say no. Expected me to stay quiet. Expected me to protect the family. But I looked at her face, her cold, unapologetic face, and I said, yes. Rowan's eyes widened with shock as handcuffs closed. Around her wrists, Caleb begged. Judith backed me. Mason stood like stone. Rowan spent her wedding night in jail, and even that wasn't enough to undo the damage she'd already done. The hours after Rohan was taken away were a blur of noise and silence, grief and fury, police voices and the trembling weight of Lily asleep against my chest. I don't remember walking back into the hotel. I don't remember sitting down. I don't remember much except the sound of Mason breathing too fast beside me, like he was trying to outrun the fear still clawing at him. Caleb stayed outside the police car until the very last second, pleading for them to let her go, his voice cracking in ways I had never heard before. But the officers were unmoved. What Rowan had done wasn't just reckless or emotional. It was a crime with a very clear name, and I had given them permission to call it exactly that. When the car finally pulled away, taking his bride toward the station instead of a honeymoon suite, Caleb broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, with a single, devastating exhale that made him look 10 years older in a minute. Then he turned and walked away from the hotel lights, shoulders collapsing inward. Judith touched my arm. You did the right thing, she whispered, though her hand trembled. She needed to be stopped. Needed to be stopped. The words echoed in my head for hours, because this wasn't the first time. Rowan had endangered something that belonged to me. The miscarriage flashed through my memory like a sudden knife hurt shoe catching my ankle, my body slamming forward into the railing. The impossible smile she wore weeks later, as she posted cryptic quotes about letting go of what's not meant to stay. I had forgiven what I thought was an accident. I had swallowed pain because I didn't want to believe malice existed in her. But now I knew exactly what she was capable of. The next morning, the world felt wrong, too bright, too normal, like it hadn't witnessed the worst night of my life. The hotel breakfast room hummed with chatter, clinking glasses, and the smell of syrup. Untouched by the chaos that had detonated hours earlier, guests whispered when they saw Mason and me. Their pity disguised as curiosity. I clutched Lily closer. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rowan sitting behind the hotel, smoking, completely calm. Like kidnapping my child was a mild inconvenience she hadn't planned on explaining. Mason reached across the table, touching my hand gently. "You didn't sleep at all," he murmured. "How could I?" I whispered. "Every time I look at her I think, what if we hadn't found her? What if we were 10 minutes later?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. The fear sat between us, thick and immovable. Caleb appeared later that morning, pale and worn, his tie crooked, his eyes hollow. He looked like someone who'd lived through a war nobody else could see. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. Judith bristled, stepping protectively in front of Lily's stroller. But Mason nodded and guided him into a quiet corner of the lobby. I followed, holding Lily like she was air I couldn't breathe without. Caleb rubbed his face. "She said she didn't mean to scare you," he began, voice hoarse. "She said she felt overwhelmed and just reacted." I laughed, sharp, humorless. "She hid behind the hotel with my child for an hour. She disappeared while your mother was in the bathroom. That wasn't overwhelmed, Caleb. That was intentional." He flinched. Good. He needed to. Mason's voice was low, controlled. "She could have walked out onto the street. She could have gone to a car. She could have left. Do you understand that?" Caleb swallowed hard. I know, and I'm not here to defend her. I'm here because I need to ask. Is there any way you'd consider dropping the charges? The silence that followed was suffocating. I stared at him, not in anger and disbelief. "No," I said firmly. "Absolutely not. Alina, she tried to take my child. My child, do you understand what that does to a mother?" My voice cracked, and I hated that it did. But the truth sat in my throat like broken glass. Caleb looked down, defeated. "She's the mother of my daughter. I don't want Ivy to grow up with her mother in jail." I tightened my grip on Lily. Then maybe she shouldn't have kidnapped someone else's. Hey, closed his eyes, as if the truth had physically struck him. When he opened them, I saw something new. Fear. Real fear. Not of losing Rowan, but of realizing who she actually was. "I don't know what to do," he whispered. Mason placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "Protect your daughter. That's what you do." Caleb nodded slowly, then walked away, his steps heavy, his world crumbling. 2 days later, the police called with an update. Rowan wasn't showing remorse. She wasn't cooperative. She wasn't stable. Her statements were erratic, switching between claiming she was helping, insisting Lily needed her, and accusing me of trying to replace her place in the family. Replace her? Replace what? The police officer cleared his throat before continuing. "Mrs. Hale, there's something else you should know." My stomach tightened. "What?" "When she was brought in, she asked repeatedly if Ivy could be brought to the station. She became distressed when told that wasn't possible, and she made comments suggesting she believed Lily and Ivy were somehow interchangeable. Ice crawled through my veins. Interchangeable. Like babies were objects. Items. Things she could swap and keep and claim. Mason's hand squeezed. Mine so hard. I felt my bones pressed together. The officer continued. "We strongly recommend you take additional safety precautions. Change your routines. Secure your home. Do not allow her access to your child under any circumstances." I nodded numbly. "We won't." But after hanging up, I couldn't stop the tremble that overtook my hands. Rowan didn't just want Lily out of jealousy. She wanted Lily because something inside her was broken in a way that made boundaries meaningless, and that terrified me more than anything else. The community's reaction was vicious. Some praised me for pressing charges. Others called me cruel, dramatic, vindictive. Who sends a woman to jail on her wedding night? As a fellow mother, I would have shown compassion. She didn't hurt the baby, so why ruin her life? People talked like Rowan deserved mercy simply because she was a mother. But so was I. And mothers protect their children. Judith defended us fiercely, telling anyone who would listen that Rowan was dangerous, unstable, unpredictable. But the whispers continued. People love a villain, but they love a martyr even more. Rowan played both roles beautifully for those who didn't know the truth, but the truth didn't care about opinions. The truth remained. She had taken my child, and she would have done it again. In the weeks that followed, Mason installed cameras around the house, upgraded the locks, and insisted on sleeping with the baby monitor clipped to his shirt. He checked the windows twice every night. He walked me to the car every time I left the house. He watched Lily with a softness wrapped in iron. Trauma, reshapes apparent. We were no longer simply new mom and dad. We were guards, and Lily was our world behind reinforced walls. Even though she was too young to understand, she sensed it, the tension, the fear, the way our bodies stiffened at unexpected sounds. She clung to me more, slept against my chest more, woke in the night crying until Mason whispered to her, voice shaking with emotion. He tried to hide. I hated Rowan for what she stole. Not just peace, not just trust, but the innocence of our first months as parents. No mother should learn fear this early. About 3 weeks after the wedding, Caleb came to our house unannounced. He looked exhausted, sleepless, haunted. He held Ivy in a carrier, gently bouncing her as he stood on our doorstep. His hand shook slightly. "Can we talk?" he asked. Mason tensed, but I nodded and stepped aside. Inside, Caleb sat on our couch like a man made of glass, afraid he might shatter if he moved too quickly. I filed for emergency temporary custody. he said quietly. I stared at him. You did. He nodded. Ivy stays with me for now. Rowan isn't allowed contact until she undergoes a psychological evaluation. Relief washed through me so suddenly I nearly sagged into the chair. Caleb swallowed hard. I didn't want to believe anything you said, but after what she did, after hearing her talk about Lily like she was something she could claim, his voice broke. I realized Ivy wasn't safe. Emotion swelled in my chest, not sympathy, but something like respect, the kind that grows when someone chooses the harder path because it's right. Not easy. What will you do? Mason asked. Caleb looked down at Ivy, his eyes filling. Whatever it takes to keep her safe, even if that means raising her alone. Silence hung heavy. Finally, Caleb lifted his gaze. I need you both to know. I'm sorry for not believing you sooner, for everything. He wasn't just apologizing, he was grieving. Grieving the woman he loved, the illusion he'd held, the life he thought he was building. We nodded. Words felt pointless. Grief doesn't need replies, it needs witness. When he left, I watched him walk to his car, Ivy nestled against his chest. For the first time, I felt something shift. Not peace, not closure, but the beginning of understanding. Rowan hadn't just been dangerous. To me, she had been dangerous to everyone she loved, and that danger wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot, because the evaluation would reveal something. None of us were prepared for something that would pull every thread of this story tighter, and something that would force me again to choose between mercy and fear. Only this time, the consequences would be even sharper, even darker, even more irreversible. I thought the worst was over once the police car disappeared with Rowan inside. I thought that was where the danger ended, cut cleanly, decisively, like a thread finally severed. But that was naive. The truth is, danger doesn't disappear when you expose it. It thrashes, it claws, it tries to rewrite the story, to pretend it never existed. And Rowan? She wasn't done rewriting anything. A week after Caleb filed for temporary custody, the court ordered a psychiatric evaluation. Mason and I expected it, we had been warned. But knowing something intellectually is different from hearing it spoken into existence. By a lawyer with a clipboard and sympathetic eyes, she may have underlying personality disorders, the lawyer explained. Possibly delusional tendencies related to motherhood, attachment, and perceived threats? Perceived threats. That was me. I was the threat. Rowan had built a world where I was stealing something from her: attention, identity, motherhood, family. She'd invented a version of reality where Lily belonged to her because she needed Lily, and needs twisted by trauma can become obsession. The report wasn't final yet, but the preliminary notes painted a chilling picture. She had no remorse, no recognition that her actions were wrong. She insisted repeatedly that Lily was better with her, that Ivy and Lily were connected, that I was too fragile to be a good mother. My hands shook. As I read the summary, Mason gently pulled the papers from me. Before I could crumble them, "Don't read the rest," he said softly. "I have too," I whispered. "I need to know what she thinks. Why? So I can stay ahead of her." He took a long breath and pulled me against his chest. "We're already ahead. We have the truth. That's enough." But it didn't feel like enough. Not when someone like Rowan believed any truth she invented. Caleb kept his distance but updated us periodically, always sounding exhausted, always carrying the weight of someone who had loved a person he no longer recognized. He met Rowan's lawyer, attended the custody hearings, sat in sterile rooms while professionals asked him questions no person should have to answer about the mother of their child. He told us, Rowan alternated, between crying hysterically and insisting she did nothing wrong. She says she just wanted to help, he murmured one night over the phone. But she also says, you've been trying to erase her since your wedding day. Erase her. She had been the one throwing wine at me. She had been the one obsessing over my pregnancy. She had been the one who stole my child. But delusion has no logic, only emotionally gravity. She's not the person I thought she was. Caleb whispered, voice breaking, and I don't think she ever was. I felt for him. Truly, loving someone unstable doesn't make you blind. It makes you hopeful, dangerously hopeful. And hope, when weaponized, becomes a trap. About 2 weeks later, Rowan requested a visit with Ivy supervised. Of course, Caleb agreed, partly because he wanted Ivy to know her mother, and partly because he still clung to some tiny foolish belief that Rowan might change. I didn't judge him for that. People don't stop loving someone just because they should. The visit was held in a sterile, brightly lit room, at a family center, cameras, social workers, rules printed on laminated sheets. Caleb sat on one side of the table with Ivy in his arms. Rowan walked in escorted by a supervisor. The second she saw Ivy, she burst into tears. But when Caleb shifted slightly and Ivy's blanket moved to reveal a bit of her pale onesie, Rowan froze. She looks like Lily, she whispered. My heart stopped when Caleb later told me this. The supervisor, professional but startled, said gently, "This is your daughter." Rowan shook her head. No, they look the same. Babies replace each other. People replace each other. You don't understand. She reached out not for Ivy, but toward the door, like she expected Lily to appear any moment. Where's the other one? She demanded. Caleb ended the visit immediately. He told the supervisor he needed a moment alone, then walked outside and threw up on the sidewalk. When he called Mason afterward, his voice was thin and broken. She doesn't know the difference. She thinks they're interchangeable. I held Lily tightly that night, rocking her until she fell asleep against my chest. Terrified by the realization that Rowan didn't see babies as individuals, she saw them as emotional places, as solutions, as objects that could fill the emptiness inside her. That made her so much more dangerous than I had ever understood. People continued to criticize me.online.throughmutualacquaintances.in, whispered circles at family gatherings I refused to attend. Putting a mother in jail doesn't fix anything. She didn't harm the child. Maybe she was Overwhelmed, they were family. Why not handle it privately? She lost everything, and you made it worse. It made me furious. It made me sick, but it also made me understand something sharp and unyielding. No one truly understands a mother's fear except another mother who has experienced it. Everyone else romanticizes it or dismisses it, but fear like that lives in the bones. 3 weeks after the wedding incident, the court hearing arrived. I didn't want to go. The idea of being in the same building as Rowan made my skin crawl, but I needed to know what the court would decide. I needed to hear the truth spoken aloud by someone with authority. Caleb walked in with Ivy, supported by his lawyer. Mason held my hand. Judith sat behind us, quiet but deadly in her support. When Rowan entered, escorted by 2 deputies, my breath caught. She looked hollow. Not weak, not broken. Hollow, the way an abandoned house is hollow, steeped in the memories of life, but devoid of living. Her eyes flicked toward me instantly, then to Lily and Mason's arms, and for a split second, something passed across her face, a spark, a craving, a recognition that made every muscle in my body lock. Glanced between the 2 babies again, her lips parted, and I understood that she still didn't fully grasp which child was hers. Her mind had blurred the boundary. Her obsession had rewired reality. The judge spoke, lawyers spoke, the social worker spoke words like instability, risk factors, diminished capacity, unsafe behaviors. But all I heard was Rowan's soft inhale every time Lily babbled or kicked her little feet. Finally, Rowan stood to give a statement. I didn't kidnap her, she said plainly. I was taking care of her. Elena can't handle motherhood. She's fragile. She panics. She needed me. Lily needed me. I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. No, that's not true. But Rowan wasn't talking to us. She was talking to the judge. She should be grateful, Rowan continued, voice trembling. I saved that baby once already. I caught her when she slipped on the stairs at Caleb's house. If it wasn't for me, Lily wouldn't even be alive. The world stopped. The air left my lungs, my vision. TUNNELed. The stairs, the railing, the miscarriage, my mouth went dry. What did you say? Rowan looked at me, annoyed. I said I saved her. The first one. The one before this one. The one you lost wasn't strong enough. I did you a favor. Mason surged forward, stopped only by the bailiff. I couldn't breathe. My chest caved in, my ribs aching as if my grief had claws. I heard the judge speak sharp, horrified words. I heard Judith's gasp. I heard Caleb choking on a sob behind us. But all I could hear clearly was Rowan's voice echoing in my mind, twisting itself around my heart like barbed wire. The one you lost wasn't strong enough. I did you a favor. The room descended into chaos. The hearing was adjourned. Rowan was taken out of the courtroom instantly, screaming that no one understood her, that everyone was against her, that I was stealing motherhood. She kept yelling even as the door shut behind her. I collapsed into the bench, shaking so violently Mason had to hold my arms to stop me from falling. She caused my miscarriage. She admitted it. She believed it was justified, and she thought she was the hero. They granted Caleb full custody. Rowan was placed into mandatory psychiatric care. A long-term restraining order was issued to protect Lily and me. People stopped criticizing me after that. Funny how quickly judgment dies when faced with undeniable truth, but the damage was already done to my peace, to my memory of new motherhood, to every part of me that should have been whole, but now felt stitched together with fear. One night, a month after the hearing, I stood over Lily's crib, watching her sleep, the slow rise and fall of her chest, the tiny fist tucked under her cheek, her breath soft and warm. Mason wrapped his arms around me from behind. She's safe, he whispered. I know, but knowing didn't loosen the tension inside me. Knowing didn't erase Rowan's words. Knowing didn't mend the fractures left behind. Do you regret pressing charges? Mason asked quietly. I closed my eyes. I knew he already knew the answer. No, I regret not doing it sooner, because protecting my child was not cruelty, it was instinct. It was survival. It was motherhood, and motherhood, the real kind, was fierce. It didn't crumble under guilt or pressure, or fear of judgment. It stood its ground even when the world tried to shame it. I kissed Lily's small, soft head, inhaling the scent of her warm, milky, innocent. I will never, I whispered, let anyone take her from me again. Not family, not strangers, not the shadows of someone else's broken mind. No one, not as long as I was still breathing.